I'm Jessie David from Metal Wani, and I'm joined by Dez of DevilDriver. How's it going today?
It's going well. Thank you very much for calling in.
Yeah, of course. Now, we're a few months away from the release of Outlaws Till The End, which drops July 6th. It's highly anticipated, and you're taking outlaw country tunes and putting this heavy, heavy spin on them. Where'd this idea come from?
You know, I've heard this in my head for years and years, even getting into my parents' record collection back in the day. I've always loved heavy extreme music, from punk rock to metal. And every time I heard these songs, the lyrics were so poignant to me, I just heard them heavy. So a song like Ghost Riders or Whiskey River by Willie Nelson, which in our case is a black metal song featuring Randy from Lamb of God, I've just always heard them heavy. So it was a great thing to be able to do this, and to be able to link up with the guests that we did was fantastic.
Oh, I can only imagine. Now, I have noticed there's a little bit of controversy because you can't please everyone. You have your fans who are excited, and then there's always those ones who are worried. They hear country and they start asking questions. How are you dealing with this type of controversy?
Well, because this thing has been really kind of running underground and silent for so long, there's only been a few people in the camp that knew what we were doing. It slipped out that we were doing this, and people started to think that we were actually doing country songs, which in a country direction, which is actually funny to me. I'm just going to let that ride until they hear really what we're doing. And the people that have heard what we're doing know that we're doing an absolute onslaught of metal, and these songs are just heavy as can be. So it's going to be fantastic to have those people actually take their initial reactions and then hear the songs and be like, oh, wait a minute, it's DevilDriver, but with guests, and it's heavy.
Well, it's funny. I was actually one of those people. I was questioning it at first, and I was like, is this going to be new country? What are we talking about? Until I heard the album, I'm like, man, this kicks some serious ass. So you're 100% correct on that one.
Thank you. I mean, we just wanted to do something different, and a lot of people in the industry were having conversations that, you know, metal is in a place right now, kind of needs a little bit of a kick in the ass, and somebody needs to do something different. So I was like, well, this is definitely different. And we put our best foot forward, got all the guests that we could, a phenomenal producer behind it, and I think it's absolutely going to be it's going to be one of the records of the year. People are going to really love this.
What do you find more challenging, performing your own song or maybe putting a creative and metal twist on an already existing one? I know you mentioned Whiskey River by Willie Nelson. Was it challenging turning that into like a metal anthem and making it sound DevilDriver?
Actually, what a great question, and one that I haven't been asked. I mean, it goes both ways, right? Sometimes a cover can be very easy. Other times a cover can be very difficult. These were covers that we put our own spin on. I had to find my own kind of place within those songs. And no record that's worth anything of a good measure is easy to make. So by no means were these covers easy. We had to find our own place within them and give it our own attitude and our own special flavor. And I think we did that in a great way.
I think what grabbed my attention as well was the number of guests that are featured on this album. You're close to, 25 guests, ranging from Burton C. Bell, Lamb of God's Randy Blythe, John Cash Jr. These are big names, and they really do vary. They're all over the place. Did you intend to get so many people involved on this?
When it first started, I really didn't want it to be a guest record. I had thought that I would have maybe 2 people, and I wanted Randy for sure, and because we're very close friends. We surf together, we hang out. He's also part of my surf company, Sun Cult. But I wanted John Cash Jr. as well, John Cash Jr. And the reason was Johnny Cash is a huge influence on myself. And even, 20 years ago, I was wearing a Johnny Cash shirt on stage, on metal stages, and people would kind of bag me about it, and I'm like, well, whatever, I love Johnny Cash. So I knew that I wanted John Carter Cash and Randy. What had happened is, as people would call me, or I was having conversations along the way, say to like Brock from 36 or Mark Morton from Lamb of God, I started having conversations with Hank 3. Everyone just started saying, I wanted to be involved. And then I started realizing that, wait, I've got people from outlaw country like Hank 3 and John Carter Cash. I've got people from metal like Randy Blythe and Mark Morton. I've got people from kind of the sinister, dark, goth side like Wednesday 13. I need some of my punk heroes. And Fear is one of my biggest punk bands in the world that I love. I grew up on Fear. So having Lee Ving on a track was amazing as well. So the guests just started coming to me as I reached out to them, and they reached out to me, and it was like, hey, do you have room on a track? And it was like, yeah, I've got room. And I mean, like a guy like Burton C. Bell from Fear Factory, I mean, if we didn't have him on Dad's Gonna Kill Me, that song wouldn't have been anything of what it is like now. I mean, he absolutely slayed that chorus. So, yeah, it's been a fantastic kind of group of guests doing this thing.
I can imagine scheduling was probably a nightmare, though. It's not like you can get all these guys in one studio.
This is 2.5 years in the making. I wouldn't suggest to anybody to ever try this again. This was just, this gave me nightmares, man. And it was a logistical nightmare completely. But in the end, when it was all done, that's what the fantastic thing is. And then the opportunity to come to work with people like Lee Ving, or we flew into the Cash Cabin. We worked with John Carter Cash and Anna Cash at the Cash Cabin. I got to sign the mantle at the Cash Cabin right next to Chris Christopherson.
Amazing.
Which Johnny and John Carter actually put that mantle up in that little stone house, which is, legendary. And so we're talking about doing things that live forever, and kind of knocking back things that I've wanted to do forever, and it's a fantastic vision to be able to accomplish.
Is there one person you really enjoyed working with who maybe you would collaborate again with?
Well, I'm definitely going to collaborate with every one of these artists again, but I loved working with John Carter Cash, and I really enjoyed working with Randy. I think him watching me throw down in the vocal booth, me watching him throw down in the vocal booth, we each really respect each other as vocalists, and I think we brought out the best in each other as well.
I was going to say you're both a powerhouse for vocals, and another very raw, deep voice was Lemmy. I know you're a Motorhead fan. Did you ever try and collaborate with him?
No, I'm, lucky enough to have known Lemmy all my life, and for him to even, to know my name when I'd walk in the room. I mean, hey, Dez, how you doing? That threw me off no matter how many years I've known him. I would have loved nothing more than to collaborate with Lemmy. Motorhead is one of my most massive influences. Obviously, if you hear my voice, that's a massive influence of mine. And early on in DevilDriver's career, because we only had a short record of like 38 minutes to play live any longer, we had to cover Motorhead Ace of Spades, and we did a great job of it.
So I was lucky enough to listen to the album already. Lots of great tracks on here. You have, I think my favorite is Copperhead Road. You have The Man Comes Around, Ghost Riders in the Sky. What made you decide to go with these songs?
That was a difficult process. There was about 100 of them on the table. We finally narrowed it down to 50, and then narrowed it down to these. So, it was based on what the guys in the band really wanted. Mike, my guitar player, really wanted to do that God's Gonna Kill Me song, Dad's Gonna Kill Me song. I really wanted to do Whiskey River. I knew that Ghost Riders had to be done. So there was just certain songs that had to be done, and other ones that were like, hey, let's do Copperhead Road. Oh, cool, let's do that. I didn't think about doing that. Let's do Outlaw Man from the Eagles. That's one of the ones without a guest. We killed that song, and it's one of my favorite tunes to listen to on the bus, and it's why we covered it. If you're not a country fan, that's okay. If you're a metal fan, you're gonna love this. And if you are a country fan, you may want to go listen to this stuff, because it may portray another vision of how people feel and view country music. I view it as a real visceral, raw approach to art, and that's exactly what metal is. So these things coming together, they make all the sense in the world, and that's why it's called Volume 1. I've already got guests for Volume 2 that are massive calling me. So it looks like this thing has taken a life of its own, an approach of its own. And even though I'm getting ready to go in and do another DevilDriver record, not a cover record, but a real record, I don't know when we'll have time to get to a Volume 2, but there's already other guests calling me as of now that want to be on it.
Now, would you maybe consider doing a different genre, like punk or blues, or straight to outlaw country?
Who knows? I grew up on punk rock, so we'll have to see if that gets done. I think Lamb of God's getting ready to do that with Burn the Priest. Yeah, I'd like to hear that too. I like when bands cover tunes. I really do, especially if it's a metal band covering punk stuff or a punk band covering, have metal stuff. It's really interesting for me to hear artists do other artists' songs for some reason. You look back at even Manson when he did his cover of Sweet Dreams. Had he not done that, maybe he had not broken open as big. So there's always something to a cover that leads you to an artist, and it's always fascinating for me to see how they do those.
I want to step away from the album and ask you about metal. Where do you think the direction of metal is going?
Oh, that's really hard to know. I mean, people ask me all the time, where do you see the scene going? What do you see happening? And really, I'm at the point in my career where I don't pay attention to anything else or what anybody else is doing. I really am just freed up as an artist to do anything I want to do. I have a record company behind me, a band behind me, where I can do anything I want, and that's where my head has been. So I'm not really looking to where metal is going. I do know that it's extremely convoluted right now, and there is, where you look back 10, 20 years ago, there wasn't as many heavy bands on the scene. But it's good to see. It's good to see that extreme music, visceral music, is alive and is well and well. I was walking my dog the other night, and I walked by a garage in my area, and there was a young metal band in there jamming. I mean, and it wasn't great, but it was loud and it was ferocious, and they were obviously in there jamming. And I just thought to myself, listen to this, man. Like, it's alive, and it's alive in my neighborhood right now. So that's the fantastic thing that I think, is that metal is alive and well. Since
the scene is evolving and increasing, do you think it's maybe more challenging now for new metal bands to make it?
Well, I think you got to definitely have something different. You have to come out with something different, either a different sound, a different look. There's got to be something going on. Otherwise, you're just going to look like, you stepped out of an H&M ad with a nice fresh haircut and your fucking heavy-ass band, It's just, that's what everything is turning into. It's a trip. I'd like to see somebody come out and do some different stuff. And there's a ton of bands out there doing different things right now. And I think, we're just going to see where it's going to go. But it's alive and well, man. I mean, that's for sure.
Oh, yeah. So you did mention that you're working on a new DevilDriver album. How's that coming along?
Fantastic. This one has been 3 years in the writing process. This is why we did Outlaws Till the End. We knew it would be 3 years till you got another record from us, and we wanted people to be able to listen to something in the meantime. And we're writing the record of our lives right now. That I can tell you. And making no bones about it, this will be the record of our career. And it's been 3 years in the making with these writers that I have. So I'm extremely excited to get in and to start this process.
Do we have a release date, or how far along are we?
Nope, and I've realized with Outlaws Till the End, 2.5 years in the making, I'll never put a release date on a record ever again. When the record is done, when it's in the can, when the photos are done, when everything is done, and I have the record to hand to the record company, 4 to 5 to 6 months from there will be the release date. Otherwise, no release date. I do know that June and July, we are entering the studio to record what will be a double album staggered release.
Amazing. So do you already have songs prepared then?
48 songs.
48 songs! Holy shit.
And we're gonna narrow it down to maybe 20, maybe 22. But when I say we're writing the record of our lifetime, this will be the record that we will be judged by for the rest of our career. This will be the record that other artists judge us as well as themselves on once they hear this.
This is going to be the ride or die album then.
It's meant to be, and it's going to be a doubled staggered release. They're going to get a record a year, which means you're going to get a record this year, you're going to get a record in 2019, and you're going to get a record in 2020. And that's the way art should be. I used to get a record every year from my favorite bands, and even 2 a year sometimes from bands like Kiss. So you know what? We're kicking it up. We're not going to rely on this 3 to 4 year plan that bands are doing. And it used to be where you had to go away for a year in order to, let the fans catch up to you and this and that, and it is not that way anymore. You need to get art out, and you need to be out in everyone's face, and you need to be touring, and we're getting ready to kick that up in a big way. And that's why the last 2 years, we've really taken time off as DevilDriver. I mean, we've only done probably 3 shows in the United States this year, and we'll only do a handful this year at all. So when we do start, it's going to get ready to go.
Do you find there's a lot of pressure on yourself then, setting that goal to release a new album every year?
I don't think so. The pressure is not there. When the songs are there, when the band is firing off, and when it's just coming together, there's really no pressure. And this is why we're doing a double album with a staggered release. I've always wanted to do a double record with kind of a concept feel, and a staggered release makes sense because people every 12 to 17 months can get a record from you. And I think that's where I'm at. That's where the music business is at. That's par for the course where every other artist is doing. You know, I have 3 young sons, and they're huge music lovers, and they get, you know, a song a week, a record every 6 months, a record every year from their favorite artists. I don't know why metal has taken on this stance of, we're going to give you a record every 3 years, every 4 years, or Tool every, 8, 10 years.
Oh,
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, look, that's I know Maynard, and I think that record's probably going to be worth the wait, to tell you the truth. But in my circumstances, and in every other circumstance that I see, bands need to be putting out a record every 17 to 18 months, and they need to be doing this religiously in order to build their following and in order to actually raise the bar on the music that they're making. So, look, we're very excited to do this. We have Napalm Records that has been behind us 100% with everything we've bid off, and they really are looking forward to this double album staggered release that we're going to start to record in June and July.
So we're going to have Outlaws Till the End released this year, and then you're thinking 2019 we'll get that new one.
100%.
Well, I know we're all really looking forward to it. That's all my questions I have. Is there anything else you would like your fans to know?
No, thank you very much for the interview, and I can't wait for everybody to hear this. Like, this album has been 2.5 years in the making. This has been this has been one of the most difficult things I've ever bid off as an artist to get done. So I hope people just, enjoy this thing. Just crank it up, at your barbecue on a Saturday afternoon, and enjoy this record. It's meant to be, a fun record to listen to. You're meant to hear it and go, whoa, that's Whiskey River by Willie Nelson? That sounds insane. You know what I mean? So I hope everybody enjoys it. Thank you very much for the interview.